I think my second youngest son has mastered the art of subtlety more than all of my children combined. So, I walk to the doorway of his room where he's playing with his toys, and he looks up, and I'm excited. I'm excited to see him say, "Hey, what's going on?" And see what he's doing. I thought he'd look up and be excited, be like, "Daddy." I poke my head around the door, and I look. He looks up at me, and he just goes, and goes back down. He just completely dismisses me. It was like I was like an office gopher walking into the office of a CEO when he's running a board meeting. It's just, why? Welcome to Rumble Book Club. I'm your host, Mike Hernandez, and this is the show where a normal guy like me can talk about interesting books I've read, old and new, good and bad. So if you like the show, you like the content, you like the books that I talk about, or maybe you've been rejected by your 4-year-old too, you've come to the right place, my friend. You can follow me on Twitter, Parler, and TikTok, or you can subscribe right down below on Rumble and YouTube. But more importantly, be a part of the conversation. Help this channel grow, share these videos with your friends, and comment down below. Let me know if there's any books you'd like me to cover, and I'll be happy to add them to the list, and I might even give you a shout out. Today we're going to cover a really good book that is actually a brand new release by a favorite author of mine. We're going to take a look at The Authoritarian Moment by Ben Shapiro. Do you ever scrutinize everything you say out of fear of being cut off from family and friends, even during normal conversation? Do you hide your opinions and beliefs from your coworkers, even around the water cooler? Do you find yourself denying certain truths in fear of losing every platform to speak that you have? Ben Shapiro gives the answer to how you got there and how, as a society, we can bring ourselves out of it. So let's take a look at our 3-part criteria of the book, starting with the aesthetics, how it looks, feels, how it pops off the shelf, getting into the readability, how it reads not just intellectually, if it's kind of a difficult read or if it's relatively smooth, but also physically how it reads, if it's easy on the eyes. Then getting into the content, what kind of information or what kind of story for fiction that you're actually getting between the covers. So let's start with the aesthetics. Ben's publisher always keeps it really simple. I'm not sure how much choice Ben has in that design, but whatever it is, the end result is always really good with a simple color scheme. It's not too crazy. Just got red, white, and blue, American colors. Booyah. Nice, oppressive image of a boot coming down on you. So very subtle, right? Small subtitle here. A little transcript here from the New York Times best-selling author. Not really necessary, but nonetheless, you got the title, author, everything's prominent there. So not too many complaints about the aesthetics. I'd say a very strong 9 out of 10. Woo! I'm moving fast. Now let's look at the readability. Ben, he writes in a more dry manner than most are used to, but if you listen to his show, it's pretty consistent to what you're used to. He's very direct, though, to his credit. He doesn't get sidetracked. He also does a good job doubling back on the central points of the book so that the message, his central theme of the book, actually sticks. So he'll reiterate several points over the course of the book. As far as physically how it reads, you've got off-white pages here, and then clear font, decent margins, easy paragraphs. There's not just huge walls of text. As far as the readability goes, very strong, 8 out of 10. All right, cowboys, let's look at the content. Ben makes the claim that the leftists of America, who he makes clear are not liberals. He distinguishes between leftists and liberals. But nonetheless, he talks about how leftists have taken every major institution of American life using 3 steps. The 3 steps were achieved with a minority of people. It wasn't this massive movement. It was a minority of people, primarily originating, for the most part, on college campuses. But nonetheless, it was a minority of people who would not budge at all. They're called intransigent in their positions. They wouldn't budge the slightest in the principles whatsoever. And that tiny minority that really dug their heels on focused on these 3 methods. First, they took advantage of what he calls, what Ben Shapiro calls the cordiality principle, the belief that it is better to be cordial, and so by default, in order to be cordial, we should never offend. We should try to never offend anyone. This is an instinct that is primarily good. It actually is good to try to have civility in society. But when it's taken advantage of for insidious purposes, that's where it causes a real problem. And that's where, according to Ben Shapiro, the left really dug in. The second tactic they used is leftists push the belief that speech is violence, that to speak truth or even your own opinion is to actually inflict physical harm on people, which puts you in league with actual assailants, actual villains, actual evil people that actually go out and commit acts of violence, puts you in league with them. So in order not to be seen as that kind of villain in society, people stopped speaking their mind. The third part of this plan is once the left had completely cudgeled American society into predominant silence, they went the final step, and that was to say that not just speech is violence, but silence is violence, which meant that even if you keep your own counsel, you decide to just keep your mouth shut, it still meant, even there, that you were complicit in harm done to the left and their allies for what other people said if you didn't back up the left in what their claims were. So you had to become automatically, by default, a mouthpiece for their leftist ideas, or just in your silence alone, by not backing them up, you're committing violence against them. One thing I really like about Ben Shapiro is whenever he does source, newspapers, news sites, podcasts, most of his sources are primarily liberal sources. So that kind of debunks, or in the very least puts a damper on the accusation that, oh, he's just a right-winger pulling from his side of the aisle. No, he actually deliberately reaches out and pulls a lot of these sources from these typical leftist or left-leaning news organizations and news sites and data studies. Finally, after all this, he ends with the solution of how to reverse this process. What it essentially boils down to is it'll take those who are willing to become the next wave of immovable people unwilling to budge in their principles. So it takes a second wave of intransigent people, but from the right side of the aisle, to refuse to be whipped by this cordiality principle, refuse to accept the premises that speech is violence, and refuse to accept the premises that silence is violence. So he says there might be points where some of these methods that these large tech companies, these leftist tech companies, or these large banking companies use to try and push their leftist agenda, some of that might have to be fought with legislation, some of it might have to be fought in the courts. There's the same fronts that the left have used to push these three tactics, the right can do as well. So kind of fighting fire with fire seems to be Ben Shapiro's tactic here. So overall, I actually think it's a really great book. It does help spur a little bit of courage in those who feel kind of flustered by the social pressure of the militant left. So if you're feeling like maybe you're alone out there, maybe you can't speak your mind, give this book a read. Go out and buy it. I found this book. I got this book from Barnes & Noble. You can find it at any bookstore. It's actually one of the best sellers on the list right now. I believe it's made as high as number 2 recently. But nonetheless, you can find it at all your local bookstores. Go out and get yourself a copy. This is the book is The Authoritarian Moment by Ben Shapiro. Get a copy. Thanks for watching, everybody, and go read something.